Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. So, you want to be a realtor or a loan officer? Well, today is a good day to talk about that. I am very, very much excited to be able to do this podcast today because I think ultimately for new people that are listening in or people that are, considering getting their real estate license, you spend a lot of time really diving in and trying to decide, is this something that makes sense for you? Sure, for some people, maybe they're like, you know what? Being a realtor is my thing. That's the thing that I want to do. I just feel it. I gravitate towards it. I think that this is going to be the thing that defines what my life is. But I think for a lot of people, this can be possibly a difficult decision, or it can be a hard thing to understand and navigate. Now, I'm not going to get into everything that has to do with the real estate today. I'm not going to get into everything that has to be with the loan officer, but I am going to talk about some of my philosophies we have kind of around our brokerages and around our team on who we think people in the real estate market are successful. Now, I do want to point out that ultimately, if you want to get your real estate license just to have it, that's great. Knowing about real estate, understanding the laws behind it, and having some sort of knowledge base in anything, I think is a valuable thing to really aspire to in life, because I believe in education. I believe in growing. I believe in always trying to gather information. And I do believe that real estate is one of the foundational building blocks for understanding how to build wealth in America. A lot of people really do not understand the power of having this information and how it forces you to branch into other parts of finance, economics, the economy, politics. It really is a eye-opener, and I think that for that reason alone, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting your license. Now, do you need to get a license to learn that information? No. But I understand there are people who get their license, they hold them, and they don't really do much with them. And I think that's totally fine. Now, I don't think that you should market yourself as a realtor, right? I understand that there is some sort of benefit to helping a friend or a family member out, and you have your license, so why not? But I think that, in all reality, I always believe that the customer or the consumer should get the best service possible. And if you're just a person that holds your license and then every once in a while you kind of bring it up and you say, oh yeah, I have my license, and your cousin or your aunt, your uncle want to sell their house or whatever, you're not going to be the best person for them. And that's the honest truth. You're just not. Now, if you're going to become a part-time realtor and you're actually going to take it a little bit seriously and you plan on learning how to do everything effectively, and maybe you're going to do, 2, 3, 4 deals a year, then that's different, right? But if you just have your license to have it, maybe it's a benefit for yourself because you want to buy properties later and you think you can utilize it that way, that's great. But you're not a real realtor. You are a person that has a real estate license. And so I think that person is not necessarily who we're talking about in this podcast, but I do think there are people that are out there that are interested in having their license or doing the education. I've spoke to a couple people who've told me like, oh yeah, I went through the courses and I learned a lot of information. I didn't get my license, but I went through the course and I was like, that's great. Nothing against learning. So if that's what you want to do, that's excellent. Do it. But this is for people who are seriously considering and getting into the market. And this is at the very least being a part-time realtor, right? And being a part-time realtor, I think you need to do at least 3 or 4 deals a year. The average realtor is doing 6 to 7 deals. People who are full-time in the industry, they really need to be doing 10 to 15 deals a year. And then you have people that are high achievers, that are doing, maybe upward to 30 deals a year. And then really, outside of that, it's pretty tough. Then you kind of build a team and you have a brokerage, possibly things like that. But I think that's kind of where it sits. And so if you're at that, you want to be at least at that barrier entry. I think this is where that conversation happens. And people do reach out to me. And I do have a couple people that I think would be amazing realtors. And I've been trying to get them to get their real estate license. But becoming a realtor can be kind of scary because I think a lot of people feel that you're kind of obligated now to do real estate. And maybe you're not quite ready for that. Maybe your job doesn't quite allow for that. I know that I worked at a job at various points in my life where there was a no moonlighting policy. And so obviously I don't want to put anybody in positions where you can't, like, you're going to violate and not your job requirements and lose that job and not be able to pay your bills and things like that. But I do want to bring light to, what is it like getting your license? What is it, what can you expect? And who do we personally think, should be in this market? I think everybody who's in the real estate market at one point or another feels like the market's saturated with people that aren't good at this job. And, there's the old adage that 10% of realtors are doing 90% of the business. And I think that is in large part to, and those numbers aren't, 100% throughout the entire country. But ultimately, the 10% doing 90 is, it's not that hard to see who the realtors are who are promoting themselves, put money behind their branding, are building teams, are building brokerages, and have this as a career, right? And so that's why at our brokerage and kind of my philosophy is that we really work with career realtors and career loan officers. We do have I have a couple team partners that this is kind of a side thing for them, and they do a couple deals a year, and that's great. But our goal is really to take realtors who are doing maybe 6 to 10 year deals a year and bump it up to 15 to 20 deals, right? So this is ultimately feels like it's a career for you. Now, the thing about the money and the amount of deals you need to do and the amount of the area you live, we will dive into a little bit later, but it does play a significant role. And this is why that number becomes an indicator for what a career realtor is versus kind of a part-time realtor. Typically, a part-time realtor will either have a spouse that already makes money, or they will already have a job where they make money and they're kind of want to dabble in real estate and things like that. And I think that sort of approach to real estate leaves it open for anybody. I think if you're a driven person who can do really well at the job you currently have, and you have some flexibility, and you have an interest in real estate and helping people, and you have this sort of demeanor that can deal with, clientele and different personalities and a lot of customer service, and you're in a position to do that, I think that's the easiest thing for most people. And I do think that's what most people have as a realtor. Now, when it comes to being a loan officer, I think the barrier of entry is much higher because there's not a lot, in my opinion, like loan officers, like kind of a part-time loan officer. I guess you kind of could, but there's so much involved with it. And typically, you're going to join these brokerages that need production done and things like that. So I will talk about the loan size as we get a little bit higher, but sticking to the real estate side, I think that's a great barrier and I think that's a great entry point for people, right? You have some free time. You have, you do need to be prepared to have the same level of customer service as the full-time professional. I don't think you're always going to be able to be as good as them just because they're fully in it. They're fully integrated. They understand what's going on. But I think the personality type and the ability to do it is opened up for mostly anybody. Now, obviously, you have to take the exam. So you need to be able to be a person that can dedicate the time. The real estate hour requirement for the exam, I believe, is 135 hours or 125 hours. You'll have to check that, but it's right up there. And then you still have to take the exam. You still have to pass it. There's a 70%. I believe there's a 60% fail rate on the first try on your real estate exam, but you only need to get a 70%. So, there is that sort of thing. If you are trying to do this part-time, you have to be the type of person that doesn't mind spending their free time studying, spending their free time getting prepared for this exam and taking the exam. And in that meantime, you have to be able to find a brokerage and, convince them like, oh, I want to be a part-time broker, and make sure all of that fits for you and things like that. And so, I think this does open the road up to a lot more people. And I would say that I wouldn't be as critical of this sort of person. I would say that, if you can be the type of person who is cognizant of what's going on and want to learn what's going on and be able to come up to the level of customer service that needs to be done, there's going to be an understanding from your broker side that you are a part-time realtor. You're not going to learn this as fast, and you're going to need some help right now. That's really going to depend on the brokerage you're with, because, some brokerages, they charge fees up front. They have coaching fees like that. So it might not make sense for you to be spending all of that money when you are choosing to be a part-time realtor. But there are other brokerages that don't have that. So you really need to find that place that fits for you. But I think there's a place for that sort of realtor. And I would say that, full-time realtors, probably most would be like, yeah, please don't come into the market. Don't do this part-time. Like, this is our career. We're trying to, do what's best for everybody. But, it doesn't matter what they say. It matters what you want out of life. And it's totally okay to have a side gig or something like that, so long as you can provide the service that needs to be. So you people, you're good to go. That's the sort of basic outline. What I want to jump into is essentially a full-time realtor, right? I think I've talked to a lot of people, and where we're kind of sitting with most of the people on the podcast and most of the realtors and loan officers I talk to is they're trying to find a way to make this their career, right? And that's the hardest part of this. That's where we really start to distinguish the type of person that can be in this. And this isn't necessarily like a type A person or a person that has a lot of influence or, is already affluent or anything like that. What it is, it's a person who has a mentality, right? We believe totally, and I believe totally, that in order to be successful in this industry and to work your way into becoming a full-time realtor and making this career, this has to be a lifestyle. This isn't a matter of full-time versus part-time. This isn't a matter of work-life balance. This isn't any of that. This, in order to be successful, is a lifestyle. And it's like anything else that becomes a lifestyle: the way that you eat, the way that you exercise, the way that you value your free time and your family. All of these things, at some point, they all play together. When you try to argue about work-life balance, you're essentially saying that you compartmentalize your life, and that one part is more important than the other part. And I know that this is a big thing right now, especially among the younger generations. But ultimately, I think you find the most success, and I think diet is the best example of this. When you have a diet that is your lifestyle, not a fad diet and things like that you fall off on or hard to keep up with. Your overall diet as a whole, your nutrition intake and the way that you treat it and the way that you appreciate it is part of your overall lifestyle. And it doesn't just affect what you're eating every day, but it affects how you feel, where you go, all of that sort of stuff. And so that's how we look at it. And I think that if you want to be a career realtor, that's how you need to approach this. Being able to look at this and say, okay, I understand that, maybe you have no ties to real estate. Some people, they do, they're generational real estate people. They're parents or aunts or uncles will feed them business because maybe they're tailoring out, or maybe you're extremely social and you're already tied into a bunch of stuff, and you're that perfect age where all your friends are about to buy, and you kind of luck into it. And that does happen. There's some people, they come in, they knock it out, they get 10 deals their first year, but most people do not. Most people have to learn how to build into this career. And there's different aspects of it. I saw this really funny meme earlier, actually, while I was preparing for this. And it says, and this is for the LO, but it deals with real estate as well. It says, pass the MLO exam. All I learned is how to stay out of jail. And if you're in the industry, you understand that. It's funny. If you're not yet, it's because essentially the exams mostly teach you about laws and how not to break them. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to learn how to navigate these laws so you don't get in trouble and you don't break any rules for your clients or your brokerage. That's extremely important. But after you do that, you have to learn how to do the actual job. And the job is separate than how to be effective at the job. And what I mean by that is you need to learn how to write a contract. You need to learn how to do, you need to learn how to get all of your stuff lined up for doing showings, for getting your marketing material ready, for negotiating for your clients, obviously writing the contract. Like I said, you have to learn, who are the inspectors, how do appraisals work, how does title work, how does escrow work, how does working with the loan officer work, and vice versa. This is the same entry point, I think, for most loan officers. That makes the most sense, is learning that same stuff on your side, and then also kind of understanding how that translates over to the real estate side. This entry point for career people is the same on both sides. And that's just the first part. I mean, technically that's the second part. You learn the laws, you learn this, right? But that's the first main part. You have to learn how to actually do the job. But once you learn how to do the job, this is where people have the most trouble, right? And I always say, if somebody's doing, about 6 deals a year, they know how to do the job. They know how, if they know how to write contracts, they know how to, do all of the critical things that will push a loan from start to end. What they don't know how to do is they don't know how to sell, market, and brand. That's the big difference. And that's the second part of this industry. And that's where you go from being a part-time realtor to being a career realtor or a career LO. Now, loan officers is a little bit different in the way that it depends where you work. If you work for a brokerage, or if you work for a bank, or, if you're doing high volume, if you work somewhere like me where I do a little bit lower volume, but I have teams that I build with. You might be working kind of at a brokerage, but you might have to build in the community with other realtors. So I don't want to say there's a straightforward way with that, but it's pretty similar, right? And so we're not going to go into today on the second part, which is how to do the job, right? We can do that some other time, because that's not the hardest part of this job, right? We'll teach you how to do that. We'll training, we'll do coaching, we'll get you all up to date. How do you, use the MLS to research properties? How do you, learn how to read comps? How do you learn how to write these contracts and negotiate them? And how do you go from A to Z and close the loan, right? That's all, pretty boilerplate stuff that you'll learn after doing loan after loan after loan. What really has to happen is, how do you learn how to network? How do you learn how to do peer-to-peer bonding? How do you learn how to, increase your marketing, increase your branding, increase your public relations, how to do ads correctly? All of that stuff is, I think, the more critical part where people are failing in this industry. And that's where essentially I come in as, an expert in this field. That's what my background is brand development, marketing, PR, sales. And that's really where we tell people this is the lifestyle portion, right? This is where, what are you doing in your free time that's going to allow you to continue to build ties? Now, I do believe, and we believe strongly, that the easiest and quickest thing to do is to build in your community. Choose where you live and build there, right? It's the fastest way for you to do it, because it is literally the fastest way for you to get somewhere. So let's use Sacramento as an example. In any given spot in Sacramento, for the most part, you could be 20 to 30 minutes away from a different part of Sacramento, depending on traffic. So as a good example, if you live in Elk Grove, maybe it's not advantageous for you to do business in Roseville. And I don't mean forever, and I don't mean any. What I mean is, we're talking about building a brand, building an identity, marketing and sales, right? Makes the most sense for you to focus on Elk Grove. Elk Grove has thousands of homes that you can be sell and listing. And this is essentially anywhere in Sacramento. So a good example for myself is I used to live in Midtown. So I used to market myself to Midtown, East Sac, West Sacramento, Pocket Green Haven, and really that just general area right there, Oak Park, because I lived there. It was, 10 to 15 minute drive for me in any direction. And I knew the community. I lived in the community. I can be there, just as quick as any realtor, if not quicker. And I was immersed in that community. I owned a business for 5 years in Midtown. Our brokerage is in Midtown. I've done stuff with a Rotary Club in Midtown. My Freemason Lodge is in downtown. So I knew the community. I immersed myself in the community. And I was in Rotary and Pocket Green Haven. And so was kind of the starting point. Now I don't live there anymore. Now I live out near, essentially on the border of Fair Oaks and Carmichael. And that's when a new decision had to be made, is how am I going to brand myself and how am I going to market myself and get into this community? Because, both of these communities are relatively, similar in price points. They're not too far off on the amount of properties that are listed. The big difference is, what's the easiest one for me to get to? Fair Oaks is a little more condensed, and I'm a little closer to it. And Carmichael goes down a little bit further. And so I've made that decision that Fair Oaks is going to be the community that I start to build in. Now I have ties in Fair Oaks. I was a swim coach at one of the clubs that were out here, and I did that for a couple years. I live out here in this community. I'm going to be coaching basketball out in this community. I plan to go. I no longer can attend the Rotary Club that I was attending, but the one in Fair Oaks actually works. And so I'm going to be attending a Rotary Club there. I'm going to be checking out the Chamber of Commerce there. And so the first thing I'm doing is person-to-person networking. I'm building that up, and my life is going to start building around that sort of lifestyle and things like that. And we believe very strongly that this is the first and most important thing to do, because people like to work with people they like. They like to work with people they've seen. And most of these things that I'm involved with gives me some sort of essence of professionalism, as well as helping and providing in the community, which I already enjoy doing. And I'm not saying that this is like your opportunity to just go join stuff because you're trying to get stuff out of everybody. That's not the way it works, right? It's a kind of give and take. I want to be involved in this community. I want to learn as much as I can about this community. When I used to live back in Manteca, I was involved a lot there. I was a community engagement director. I was part of the Chamber of Commerce, where I knew the mayor, the fire chief, the police chief, business owners in the community. I was also in Kiwanis, where I knew a bunch of other business people. I would go to events, I would volunteer, would do all this sort of stuff, right? And it gives you that opportunity to put names to face and build goodwill between each other, right? I think that's the biggest thing that people are starting to miss, and that's that lifestyle part of this career. You have to be engaged in your community. You have to really understand what you're doing. Now, here's the sweet thing about it is just because I'm marketing in Fair Oaks and because that's where my main things are, I can do real estate anywhere in Sacramento. That's not going to bother people. They're not going to be like, oh, this guy only works in Fair Oaks. Now, they might want somebody that's marketing like myself in Carmichael. And they might be like, I want the Carmichael guy, right? Or whatever. But that's very rare, right? And that's not really the thing. It's only because I'm highly accessible to the Fair Oaks community that's what I want to do. And I'm going to be essentially presenting the same thing that I would present in any other community. You know, what houses are going up, what houses have sold, what do price points look like, what are the community events, what are the restaurants, what's the community activities that are available, right? All of this sort of stuff just essentially means that I understand Sacramento. I've been in a very lucky, but I essentially moved every year when I was in college. So I've lived all over Sacramento. I've coached all over Sacramento. When I worked for the Boy Scouts, I went to every single public school in the Sac City, San Juan, and West Sac community, about, I think, nearly 100 schools. So I've been very lucky to live in these places and work in these places and do volunteer work in these places. I know the communities well, but people will look at my page and they'll say, okay, this guy, you know, he cares about what's going on. He understands the real estate market. And I won't solely focus on just, Fair Oaks. I'll do some greater Sacramento stuff. And this podcast is really more of a general, broader scope of what's going on in Sacramento and California. But overall, that's the initial starting point for building that. You're building your lifestyle in this brand. Once you've done that, and while you're doing that, you should be building your online presence and branding. I tell people that you really need to have up to 300 posts on your social media. So ask yourself, how long does it take to make 300 posts, right? If you're posting once a day, that's 300 days. That's a year of posting. So it can be very tedious up front, but once you do it, once you really build into that, it'll become second nature, right? And you'll get better at that. And there's a lot that goes into it. And I'm not going to go into the whole in-depth of how to build a brand and all of that. That'll be another podcast. And that's other kind of services and coaching that I do. But that's really important. You need to learn how to brand. You need to learn what marketing is. You need to learn what public relations is. You need to learn what advertisement is, and you need to learn what sales are, and you need to learn how to integrate all of these together. And that is the second phase that goes in with building into the community. And while you're doing both of these together, you're still refining your ability to do your actual work, right? And remember the laws. And so that is the type of person that should be getting into real estate, right? Doesn't matter about if you're female or male, doesn't matter about gender. I mean, it doesn't matter, about anything. All that matters is that you are dedicated to building a lifestyle around this, because ultimately you'll find that although this is, you don't work every hour of the day. I mean, you could if you did, all the branding, all the networking and all of that. But you'll find you have gaps in your day, right? I often am able to go to the gym at, different parts of the day, or go to the grocery store, pick up something for my wife or whatever it may be, right? Do something for our brokerage. You'll find you have gaps in your days. And that's the great part about being in this industry, is that you kind of have this freer schedule, but you're also always kind of on call, right? Because people do work on the people do their home searches on the weekends. They do their home searches when they get off of work at night. And this has changed a little bit with working from home so much, but it's all pretty similar. And so, you have to be available for that. And this is true for loan officers as well, right? We work with a lot of companies that are on the East Coast. And so, we start our days a little bit earlier, and then we go until the end of, let's say 5 or 6 o'clock. But then in the evening, people get off work and they send us documents, and we need to review those documents. We need to have them ready to submit. And so we can call the underwriters in the next day and try to get things moving forward, right? And so you kind of plan for that. And it doesn't become an all consuming part of your life, but you start to understand that you're in this industry, your life will ebb and flow, not only day to day, but season to season, different parts of the year. Work is a lot different. But it does make it nice, right? You can do real estate. I can do real estate in Sacramento, or I can fly down to San Diego and still do the same exact real estate or loan officer stuff. That sort of flexibility is pretty amazing. And, you don't get that in every other industry. So you learn to appreciate that. You learn to make that the balance of your life. But you understand that you're a realtor, you're a loan officer. This is your life. And you don't feel bad about it. You don't feel guilty, but you do need to explain to the people that are around you that this is the way your life works, right? Like, hey, babe, I can, I'm available to do things throughout the day, but I might be busy over the weekend, or I'll make sure that, I'm checking my phone, but I won't take calls. I'll text, email, and you can set that same expectations up with your clients. Like, hey, just so you know, like I am going to be out on Saturday. I'm doing whatever. I might not be able to pick up my call, but I can send you a text, or I will email back. Let me know if it's super urgent. Let me know and I'll give you a call. So you're able to set expectations. You're able to do kind of all of that. And that's the lifestyle. And that's where people are going to be the most successful. Now, the way to do that, I think, is going to come depending on the brokerage you work with. And for us, that's what we're working on, right? We're building every system in-house to make being a realtor or loan officer as easy as possible and as affordable as possible. That way you can learn how to do the job correctly and effectively. And then you can learn how to build your brand effectively, because even if you work for a national brokerage, it isn't their job to build your brand, and they're not going to. They will give you resources. You will have nice, pretty things that you can possibly buy or use or whatever that may be, but it's still going to be your responsibility. And that's where, people are failing and they're having a difficult time. And that's where we're really going to teach people how to be successful in that area. And so I'm hoping that this didn't feel like too much. I know that it's not super specific. If you'd like to hear more on the specifics, and I think it would be interesting, especially to, it's hard to go over contract. And I think at some point we're going to add a video format to this and things like that. But ultimately, this is what you should be considering, right? It's not, we'll teach you the things that you are not having, we'll teach you the things that you struggle with, and will help you develop the things that you're already good at more. But ultimately, the first thing that needs to come in your head is, okay, like this is going to be, and you'll find this a lot, that real estate a lot of times for people is their identity. And that's just the way it is. We love the people that do this, the 10%, they love what they do. They're proud of what they do. They get to help people get into homes. And ultimately, like, it is a fun, cool lifestyle, right? You get to be out in the community, meeting people and having a good time. And so if you're considering getting into this industry, either on the loan side or the real estate side, be prepared for that to be your lifestyle. Now, I do want to give one little caveat, one note. There is a big difference between a realtor and a loan officer in your day-to-day functionality. The nice thing is I can work from home or Starbucks or an office or whatever, but my day is a little more set in the way that I work around these other companies that have normal business hours. And because of that, I do need to be more available throughout the day. But I don't have to, for me, like I don't have to go out and do showings. I don't have to be driving around everywhere. And that gives me more time to coach our realtors who need help or be available to help service them. And so there is that trade-off. If you're considering being a realtor versus a loan officer or transitioning, reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Maybe we could even do it on the podcast. I'm going to talk to you about what the difference is in my experience and what I've seen in the market. But the general idea of building your brand and becoming somebody who's reputable in that industry is the same. Maybe not as strongly as being a realtor, but it is the same, right? Because you need to build your relationships with realtors, and realtors need to really build their relationships with clients. and you do a little bit of the client base as well. So definitely something to consider. So thanks for being on today, guys. I know there was a lot there to unpack. I know it's not super in the weeds, but I really wanted to get that across because especially we were having this conversation not too long ago. And I was like, you know what? I mean, that's really the only way to say it. And so thank you guys for being here. Again, this is the Hard Money Show where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. You guys have a great day.